Honorable and respectful Sadhguru Madhusudan Saiji, our Vice Chancellor here, ladies and gentlemen, students, teachers, faculty members, pranam to all of you. And as in the introduction, it was mentioned that I'm here when India has just now received the honor of hosting G20 and G20 presidency. No other time in the history of us as a modern country, an event as big as G20 has been hosted by India. So it's a matter of pride for all of us and time to showcase the world what India is all about, what India stands for. And the great service, I think if someone was to visit this institution itself, it represents what India is and the best way the India can be represented. We have students and teachers from every part of the country. We see different shades of skins and obviously people from different financial, economic, cultural, or I would say hierarchy, social hierarchy come here under one roof, and all of them are doing the great job of gaining knowledge. That's what ancient India stood for. We were a land where people from across the globe came to seek knowledge. And we were called Vishwaguru for nothing, but because we represented knowledge. And even I was going over some conversations, talks, and there are a couple of books which have been written in recent past. The best part is that India was recognized by many people, but post-14th century, the so-called period of Renaissance in Europe, and the time for, that was the time when a whole lot of conflict was happening in Europe and around. At that point in time, the history of India got to be altered. So before that, any traveler who was visiting India was always talking very highly about Indian knowledge system, Indian textiles, spices, open society, one could move freely, everyone's happy, willing to share things, and corruption-free. That's what India represented. Post-14th century, when Western travelers found a new way to India, new maritime route, things started to change because they came as traders in the beginning, which was fine because they were here to make money and then carry the riches back home. But when other states got involved with the business itself, then the change started to happen, because then it became an opportunity to colonize India. And how can you colonize a civilization which is as old as 5,000, 10,000 years old? There's no way one can colonize that kind of civilization. But so many wounds were caused on the body and soul of this country that many of us forgot who we are. With G20 presidency coming in, I think it's time to showcase who we really are and also represent what we really represent. And bigger than that, be confident about what we represent. Have faith in ourselves, have the confidence in ourselves, have faith and confidence in our civilizational value system. And I'm really not joking. My PA is with me, and she's a young person who is not a mother as yet. And she told me that whenever she gets a child, how she wishes that she will send her child to study in your institution. And it is for a reason. The reason is whether it's the Ved parties who are learning our ancient civilizational value, Rigved to Yajurved in the Yagyashala, or these are the modern people who do their MBAs and information technology and sit on the computers or create IT infrastructure. We see it all under the same roof. And that mix of civilizational value system with greater faith in humanity and not being cast in stone when it comes to the time frame, but changing with the time as the time demands, is what Sathya Sai Institute represents. And this is how exactly we want to represent our country. That while Indian women be dressed in saris, wear veni in their hair, and yet are capable enough to send and lead mission Mars. That's what India stands for. From our traditional puja in the temples at home, doing up the household chores like all mothers do, and sitting in a space center and handling mathematical equations, we do it all with the equal ease. And that's what Indian society has given us. That capacity to move easily from one space to the other, without any encumbrance. The narrative building about India has been many a times in the hands of people who know very little about India. And they see India from a colonial mindset and colonial perspective without even attempting to understand and know what we really stand for. Because it's a tedious task. Everyone wants quick food without having to cook. So 2-minute noodles can never compare with the Indian thali, because it's a work of art and takes a lot of patience and time and of course a lot of love. But I see so many people at this institute who are non-Indians, and they value the Indian value system. Grateful to all of them to have that affection for us. And when we say one earth, one family, one future, or Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, love all, serve all, it's not just a slogan. It's not just a diplomatic bit. It is who we are. It is our civilizational value system. Unfortunately, the false narrative building has happened because the colonial mindset wanted to control this great civilization. How can you control someone who is more compassionate, who has been giving knowledge and sharing its prosperity with everyone, who has actually been a place where science, technology, geometry were all discovered, without even creating an IPR, without even patenting turmeric or basmati rice. Because we believe if it's basmati, it's for everyone to eat. If it's turmeric, I must tell the world the benefits turmeric can offer to the world, that how with change of weather, turmeric will add wonders to your health, and we think that knowledge should be for all. But again, from the perspective of colonial mindset that you will try to expropriate this knowledge and call it your own, and then seek rent on this knowledge, which was never yours. It was a common knowledge of humanity. And that common knowledge of humanity was for humanity, for everyone's well-being. And thus, we offered it to anyone. You see a sick person, you'll say, you know, you need to take haldi ka doodh. But all of a sudden, you see in 21st century that haldi ka doodh, which our mothers and grandmothers and great-great-great-grandmothers have given us all when we were growing up, became golden latte, and you pay a bomb to get one glass. That's how society and civilization changed. But G20 is a platform where we truly wish the world to know all that is positive about India, all that is good in India, and all that binds us all as humanity. All that we can support each other, because if world has to survive, if world has to be a better place to live, if world has to work for prosperity of mankind, we need to be empathetic towards each other. We need to be compassionate towards each other. And with that understanding, we need to share knowledge. We need to make world a better place for everyone. It cannot be that I party and I remain happy and I exploit others when women are crying, when children don't have food to eat, when bombs are being used or wrong things are happening in the world can be a happy place to live. It cannot be, because that fear is going to harm our soul, harm our existence, no matter how rich or affluent we may be. Thus, to create this atmosphere of kindness, compassion, happiness, we need to go back to our value system. And I just hope, because when I look at these youngsters, I don't know, I keep getting drawn to this institute. And I feel so much more is possible, so much more I can ask of you to do, because you already are entrenched in that system. You already are doing so many things to protect the heritage of this country in a modern time frame. I was just thinking that on one side you're protecting the ancient value system of, say, Rigved and Yajurved, Pathis, and we are creating that class of the priestly class with modern outlook. But I also felt that maybe the children who do information technology, computer science, documentation, library science, probably can create a knowledge system, say, on Samved. Because if people who know Samved, their numbers going down, their numbers decreasing, someone needs to document it. And that becomes so important, because that was the first science relating to music. Nowhere has music been so documented, because there is a tone, there is a time frame, there is a delivery method. And once you master that, it is then your conversation is not just conversation, it is music to the ears. And thus, creating that theorem, I'll call it a theorem, of music, happened in India. Not many people know of that. Not many people know that Natya Shastra happened in this country. The first theorization or the first treatise on performing art happened in this country, and when? A few thousand years before Christ. The Western world created one system of music. We have heritage of music, and we also have presently 2 schools of music running in 2 classical schools of music, Hindustani and Carnataki music. And I feel those roots need to be cherished, need to be told to the world, because we don't want the the art forms to disappear. We do not want knowledge to disappear. I think G20 will be a good time to showcase that heritage. I was discussing since morning, I have been obsessed with one idea. And that idea is that in Uttarakhand, in Dehradun, close to that place, ASI, Archaeological Survey of India, did some recent excavations. And these excavations, they found Garud Chitti for the Yakir Shala. And the so-called historians who do not know probably the Vedic mathematics or Vedic science called it prehistoric, and that's the end of the story. I think some people who are more knowledgeable in, say, ancient Vedic maths, ancient Vedic geometry, who understand trigonometry, should pay a visit and document that site. Because when Rig Veda or other Vedas mentioned about Ashwamedh Yagya in the form of mantras, and then Atharved records the procedures of building chittis, etc. There is a live example which we have discovered recently, and it also will showcase the timeline. When you say Indian civilization is 5,000 years old, I would say it's probably double that time or triple that time. Someone needs to do the scientific research on that timeline, because simply saying it prehistoric doesn't work, is not good enough. So there are many ideas on which we can showcase what all is possible and what all is a possibility. I was very touched with the act of kindness in the form of a beautiful hospital building, a fantastic educational institution which is coming up, a free medical college, one of its kinds. Usually that's what some states have offered. But as a private institution, as an autonomous body, it's one of its kind. And people, after paying money, probably cannot have that kind of infrastructure which I saw today. And the world is struggling, and people have so much faith in Indian doctors, Indian science, Indian medical system, but we are unable to produce that many number of doctors, nurses, medical assistants, technicians. I hope and pray that this institute will offer many a solution to the healthcare system, which the world is struggling with. World is definitely struggling with nutrition. World is definitely struggling with right education, because education, not just a technical knowledge, but education to build a human soul for its further journey, to produce the character in people who can serve the society well, as is taught to all of us by our parents and gurus, that when you are in this form of body, this bodily form, the real purpose of this body is to carry the soul to the next height, next level of evolution. And for that next level of evolution, you can choose your marg. It could be bhakti, it could be seva, it could be adhyatma, it could be gyan, and use this body as a chariot to carry that soul to achieve and go on your further evolution and further journey. This institution has offered quite a lot on that ground. I thought one more point which I would put across is, if we could do, because mostly everyone is trained at Sanskrit. Mostly everyone knows Sanskrit. I'm not really trained at Sanskrit. I may have studied a little Sanskrit in my school, but I can't call myself a learned or a scholar or an academician. I know nothing. But I definitely have some ideas, and I feel if we could research on a short project and do some research on ancient spots in India. Because I was reading somewhere that everybody knows Snakes and Ladders was a board game which came from India. And Bhoganandeshwara temple or Arunachaleshwara temple, on the stones you will see those boxes being carved out. And people would have played with the dice or stone or pebble. But what I learned was that boxes in snakes and ladders represented the value system. And that value system was 5 nark ke dwar or 5 swarg ke dwar. So for going to heaven, you need to have daya, you need to have, for achieving moksha, certain characters, veer, sahasi, etc., etc. And once you reach those squares with those value systems, you go up the ladder. Then Kam, Krodh, etc. Then they will be the snakeheads and you come down. So while playing, it was not just an entertainment or time pass game. It was instilling the value, it was building the character also. I think if we can do some research on that and we start working on the ancient sports, that while playing and sporting activity, we not only build our body and mind, but we also build character. We also bring the right value system. I think that's what complete education or growing up will be all about. And we can draw many things from our ancient text and literature. Those who are academicians, who are knowledgeable people, I bow to them. And I feel these are, an illiterate soul's request that please research and work on this so that people can be made familiar with all that India has to offer and tell the world. And we can share that how important it is. Because when world is struggling at multiple levels with each other, whether through competition or through greed or control, all that at an individual level or as countries level comes from the characteristics of the people. And if we tweak those characteristics of mind, because ideas come from thought, and if thoughts can be tweaked to be right and correct, a better society definitely is what the world will have, and that's what we need to work on. When I was talking to Swamiji, he mentioned it. I just happened to make a passing remark that how do we correct, how do we change habits? I mean, it's impossible to tell these grown-up people even simple things like throw the garbage in the right place or don't use plastic bottles, or they just can't change the habits what they've got into. So he said, the best way is to pass on these values to youngsters. So the time you will waste with the elders will be a waste of time because it's hard to train them. But the youngsters will be the ones who will pick it up and carry on the tradition for the next generation. So work with the youngsters. And I feel when you say work with the youngsters, working with the youngsters for the right value system through the sports, through gaming activities, because India was the land which gave chess to the world, which gave trigonometry to the world, which gave mathematics to the world. And funny thing, which I learned recently, was that Fibonacci number, which the world knows as Fibonacci number, but in the original paper, Fibonacci himself recognizes that this theorem has come to him from India. But the world doesn't recognize that. The world recognizes that to be a Fibonacci number without going into the paper which was written by Fibonacci himself. And the worst, I will not name the country, but one of our neighbors claims the blue color was discovered by them. And I was like aghast. I said, all my gods are blue. The Krishna's shown blue, Bhagwan Ram is shown blue, and Shivji is blue. And then you say, blue color was discovered by you? I say, millions of Indians died for indigo because West wanted indigo. And we were not allowed to cultivate sustainable agriculture, food even. We were growing indigo. Millions died, and you say you created blue. In the 14th, 15th century, we were trading with Romans to Greeks to everyone in few century BC, and we were exporting muslin to blue dyed cloth to everyone. So that's what happens when you do not document things correctly, or people choose to colonize your mind. So let's free the colonization of our mind, let's free the colonization of our thought, and use G20 to showcase how bright, intelligent Indians are, and how, in spite of challenges, we have carried on with our tradition, no matter what the challenges were or what the challenges are. With these words, thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, ma'am, once again for joining us this evening and for sharing your kind words. I'm sure all our students have gained much insights and inspiration from your talk. We would now like to extend a token of our gratitude to Srimati Lekhi ji.